Rockford's home for Classic Rock, 96.7 The Eagle. Good morning. It's Double T. Special guest joining me, Paranormal Investigator, documentary filmmaker, Steve Shippy. Steve, how you doing today?
Doing great. How are you doing?
Good. Now, this new project you're going on, it's a little scary. Shock Docs, Ed Gein, the real psycho, streaming now on Discovery Plus. Talk a little bit about this. If people aren't familiar with Ed Gein, give me a little history on him.
Absolutely. Well, Ed Gein is definitely one of the most infamous, I guess you could call, serial killers in our history. The real life individual that this documentary about Ed Gein inspired fictional characters in some of the biggest horror films of all times. He inspired the character Norman Bates in Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho, Leatherface in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and Buffalo Bill in Silence of the Lambs.
So you take a look at those movies, which are scary enough as they are, and then you find out it's based off a true story. That freaks me out quite a bit.
Yeah, and the crazy thing is it's based off, all these different films that are bad enough are based on one individual, and these are just different facets of this man's personality.
Wow, this one guy was that evil. I mean, is Ed Gein the most evil psychopath of all time?
I mean, I guess it would be subjective to some degree, but definitely, in my opinion, the most deranged, the things that he did. I mean, besides obviously being convicted of homicide, committing murder, this man was digging up multiple graves, taking remains of his victims, whether it be those that he exhumed or murdered, using their skin and other body parts to create a skin suit that he would dress up in, masks that he would put on his face. He even upholstered furniture in his home with human skin.
Whoa. And this happened up in Wisconsin, correct?
Yeah, Plainfield, Wisconsin.
Wow. And, you don't expect something like that in a small town in Wisconsin.
No, I don't think you would expect anything like this anywhere, but much less in a small, God-fearing farm community like that.
I'm talking to Steve Shippy, paranormal investigator and documentary filmmaker. Ed Gein, the real psycho, the streaming now on Discovery Plus. Now, is this a project that you decided you were going to do on your own, or were you approached to do something like this?
So in this particular case, I was approached. They had so many reports coming in that there were hauntings, multiple hauntings at different locations in Plainfield, and they all were specifically tied in to the Gein case. And so after receiving so many correspondence and leads about this, they decided that, this would be a great subject for a paranormal investigation, and obviously, as well as about Gein himself. So they contacted me and felt that I would be the right investigator for it, asked me what I knew about Ed Gein. I immediately started spewing out multiple facts because I'm very well adversed in Gein, and so that's how I came into the picture.
Now, was there any apprehension of doing it just because of his history?
There was some. I must say, at first I really wanted to know more about the case. I didn't want to take the case on just because he was famous, for lack of a better word, or infamous. I've done, multiple documentaries in the paranormal space. I have, 10 of my own and several other series that I've done, and none of them have ever surrounded a famous or infamous person. So that wasn't the catalyst. But once I learned more about the hauntings that were taking place, and hearing and doing the research on why and what they were experiencing, I was compelled to do so.
Now, did you have to take any special precautions because of such an evil force that you were going to be dealing with?
Well, definitely. I mean, there's so many different ways, I guess, depending on your belief system. And, when you are investigating something of this caliber, you want to try to do different things, I guess, for protection. Obviously, there's saging, there's many different things. But, yeah, in our own way, everybody involved definitely went out of our way to take precaution.
And you're talking about, the hauntings up there and a series of them. Does the spirit of Ed Gein have a hold on this town?
From our research, from the interviews that we conducted, and from our personal experiences, we would say yes. I mean, if you're out in Plainfield and you're in these spaces where Gein was held, where he committed these crimes, if you go out there attempting to contact him, be careful because, it will happen.
Now, even, it's so many years later, it's still as powerful as it's ever been.
Yes. I mean, in our opinion as paranormal investigators, from that standpoint, I mean, I don't know how many people have tried to investigate this case from a paranormal standpoint, but I know that we were certainly the first to ever be granted access to the Gein property, the Gein farm. We were the first camera crew to be allowed on that land since his arrest, over 60 years ago.
All right, so you got this huge story, huge history. Where do you start?
Well, we kind of start, I guess, at the very beginning before we have boots on the ground. We're looking into the history, digging into the archive, trying to find out everything we could about his crimes, his arrest, who he was, all information about his property, getting all of this mapped out. At that point, we proceed forward. We go out to the community. We start to canvass the area, try to get interviews, go to the historians. And, of course, things happen on the fly, too. Always with these type of cases, you think you have a rock-solid plan of where you're going, who you're doing it with, and what you think you know, but then things start to change. And out there quickly, we were getting leads. One of those leads, not to spoil too much, but we were told that a local collector had several of Gein's items. So we secured an interview with this gentleman. He had several different things, one of them being a knife. And he also let us know that as a result of having these items, he had run into a horrible streak of tragedies in his life. His house was extremely haunted. We did an impromptu investigation of the home. It was pretty wild.
So how does someone end up with Ed Gein's stuff?
Well, number one, his house was burnt down.
Okay.
So shortly after his arrest, somebody went out there in the middle of the night and burnt the home down. Obviously probably as a way to try to kind of end the media frenzy and all the chaos happening in the community. But a lot of things were left behind. People were just running out there, grabbing them as souvenirs. Even his vehicle had been sold in auction, and at one point we had traced that it was being used at fairs and that type of thing. Here's Ed Gein's car. Take a picture sitting in Ed Gein's car. It's pretty bizarre.
That is so bizarre. I'm talking to Steve Shippy, paranormal investigator and documentary filmmaker. His latest project is Shock Doc's Ed Gein, the Real Psycho, streaming now on Discovery Plus. Well, you always have a medium with you. What kind of precautions did she have to take because now she's dealing with him directly?
Well, she definitely took a lot of precaution, as much as she possibly could. I know that after the investigation, just from following her on social media and being a friend of hers, she did several different cleansings, all sorts of different things. She's gone on the record to say that she has some concern that this case will basically haunt her for the rest of her life as a result of opening herself up to those, to that energy, those spirits, and particularly Gein and his mother, Augusta.
How about yourself? Did it affect you at all?
Not in the same way, and I believe maybe true to his nature. Gein always targeted women. That was what he did, and I feel that a combination of the fact, of Cindy being a woman and the fact that she was able to open herself up to be able to communicate, with those spirits. I think, sadly for her, that kind of made her the biggest target, I would say.
I don't, like you said, I don't want to give away too much, but can you share a story or an experience from the whole ordeal?
Yeah, I mean, there was so many, but one that instantly pops in my mind is we had gone to the Wharton's hardware store, which is where Ed had murdered one of his victims. And while we were in the store, we went to a specific a back room, so to speak. We had heard some sound back there. We went right to the sound. And while we were in there, I was looking in one direction, and then Cindy started saying, "I feel like someone's coming up behind me." And then she starts holding on to her would be her right ear and saying that it feels like someone's touching her. So I turned this device called an SLS system right at her, which basically shoots out a grid of infrared lasers and searches for anything three-dimensional. And right away, an anomaly pops up right on the same side behind her as she's stating. And I just thought that was amazing. And time again, while we were investigating, when Cindy would have an experience and call it out loud, within 60 seconds, the meters would corroborate what she was saying. So she's really a gifted medium.
Wow, that is just crazy. And where does this rank? I mean, obviously, he's a famous spirit or psycho or whatever you want to call it, but where does it rank in your world of investigations?
Well, I mean, I would definitely put it right at the very top. It was amazing how much response we were getting, how immediate the response was, and how specific the responses were. And as well as any time that we would talk about Gein at any of these locations, all of our equipment would start to do the same thing. It would malfunction the same way. We were getting direct verbal response through the ITC communication. We caught phrases like "put on the suit," Ed Gein, Augusta, which was his mother. I mean, these are so specific.
Well, and a lot of times it takes a little bit to get a spirit to answer you. So he didn't hesitate at all, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. There's times where you could go an entire night or a couple of days and think nothing is happening, and you're not even sure if anything is happening, and before you can get some type of communication. In this case, it was always almost instantly. As soon as we began, all hell would break loose.
Yeah, I mean, the story of Ed Gein is a pretty gruesome one. So as you're making a documentary, do you have to kind of hold some things back, or did you just let it go and tell the story as it is?
There's definitely things we hold back in this particular case. I mean, the documentary, Ed Gein, The Real Psycho, is already dark. It's definitely just scary to some audiences, I would say. So we tried to hold back things that were far worse. The gruesome details of some of the things that he did. And likewise, after going through the reports and having access to some of this stuff at the old historical society out there, you could easily see that there's a lot of things that were kept out of the headlines as well. And I'm sure for the same reason, because you probably couldn't even print that stuff.
Oh, yeah, I bet. Is it any different, that it's not going to be shown on regular TV, that it's more of a streaming service, Discovery Plus? Can you do a little bit more that way?
I would think so, definitely. I think for a couple reasons. I think, number one, the fact that it's not necessarily made for television, so to speak, but also the fact that what I love about the Travel Channel / Discovery Shock Doc series is it's just that. It's a documentary. It's long form, which allows you to tell more of the story and go into more detail. So I really enjoy the Shock Doc series and was honored to be a part of one of them.
Yeah, that's awesome, because then you don't have to try to break it up into segments, for commercial breaks and stuff. You could just do it long form. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Talk about where people can find Discovery Plus and find stuff about you and the documentary.
Yeah, absolutely. So Discovery Plus is a brand new streaming platform, obviously created by the Discovery Channel and all their different networks that they have. It's really an excellent streaming service. You can find it on your app, through the App Store, on any smartphone or anywhere online. You can download it right to your TV like Netflix or anything else. It's a great service. As far as myself, you can find I have a series on Travel Channel, Haunting in the Heartland. You can search that on demand or on Amazon Prime. And as well, I do have 10 feature-length documentaries, which I have produced myself, called the Haunted Saginaw Film Series, and all of those are available on Prime.
Very, very cool. And what's your next project you got coming up? Got that planned yet?
Yeah, absolutely. To this date, my biggest film that I have produced personally, A Haunting on Dice Road, the Hell House, we're actually going to reopen that case as a result of obtaining 40 hours of archival footage and audio from that case, which we didn't even know existed.
Very, very cool. Steve Shippy, paranormal investigator, documentary filmmaker. Check out Ed Gein, The Real Psycho on Discovery Plus. Thank you so much, Steve, for taking the time. Always great chatting with you.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
It's Rockford's home for Classic Rock, 96.7 The Eagle.